All right, episode 2 of Out of the Park Baseball 21. We are here. It is March 12th. So we are here. Thank you so much for all of the support that you gave me on episode number 1. It was honestly something that I really wasn't expecting. I started up a brand new channel, and it takes a while, at least most of the time it does, for that to kind of take off, but I'm surprised. I had over 20 people subscribe to me. I think the video has over 300 views the last time I checked. Comments were pouring in, it was really cool to see. After being out of this for as long as I was, it was exciting to see all the support that started coming in, and I hope it continues to. As I said, it's one of my favorite parts of YouTube, being able to interact with all of you guys. So I'm excited for what the future holds, and I'm very excited for this series. It is the official launch day. I had planned on recording this earlier, but if you watched episode number 1, you would know that I work for the Trenton Thunder, and I actually had some stuff that I got to do today, which was really neat. So that's why, if you look at my clock, you can't see my clock actually, I don't think, but it is 7:27 right now as I am recording this. So it was a little later than I thought I would be doing this, but regardless, this is the release build. I said I was going to wait until Friday to do episode number 2. That way they could fix all of the major bugs and glitches and stuff and get everything they need to get in the game, update the rosters a little bit. I wanted to wait for all that to happen before I moved on, and I did. Now, I saw that some of you would be interested in tutorials for this game, which is really cool. As I said, I am going to have a lot of free time over the next several weeks, and maybe more than that. We'll see. So I could definitely do some tutorials. They should be coming soon. I just have to kind of map out how I want to do them in a way that makes sense and is easy to understand for everyone. So here we are. There are a couple things I want to talk about before we start the simulation. We will start the simulation in this episode. So this is how I have my screen set up. So this is a tip right here, not really a tutorial, but just a tip. Depending on how big your monitor is, maybe you want to set up your screen in a certain way. So if you click this screen setup thing here in the top right, you can choose how many rows you want. So you see I have 3 selected. You can have as many as 12, which is pretty crazy. And the same thing for columns. You see I have it on the auto, which is 4. And you can kind of customize what you want to see. So this is your manager's office. So a lot of times you'll see me at this team home screen, but this is the manager's office. This is where I choose to start my game every time I load back up Out of the Park Baseball. So I can kind of customize all this based on what I want to see. So if I don't want to see this personal info, for example, right, I just click right here where it says personal info anywhere on this bar, and I can choose really anything that I want to see. So maybe instead of seeing this personal info, I can see who's hot, right? And obviously it says nobody right now because we're not in season, but maybe I want to see my top prospects, who the game thinks are my top prospects, and it shows you those guys right here and their statistics. Or maybe I want to see the team batting leaders, which of course there aren't any right now. Or maybe I want to see the team chemistry, see how that's going, see what that's at, and see who's content, see if anybody is upset, and if they are, how I can kind of rectify that. So that is kind of something cool you can do. You can customize that. And another thing you can customize, which I just did, I did a lot of stuff before I started recording. I got all my settings, because this is the new save that I said I was going to wait for. This is my brand new save. This is the file that we are going to use. So one of their big features this year was kind of personalized statistics. So in the past, if you go to a player screen, so let's just go to Xander Bogaerts, why not? So if you go to Xander Bogaerts, for most of you, and I will actually go to this real quick. So let me just go. So if I go move up, and okay. So most of the time, if you go into the player screen, this is what you're going to see for batters. And for pitchers, it's the same thing. They kind of show those like basic statistics. Well, one of the new features in Out of the Park Baseball this year is that it's super customizable. You can actually see what stats you want to see show up here. It sounds like a really bad way to describe it, but I'll go into it. So if you go into, if they're a batter, you go into batting stats. If they're a pitcher, you can go into pitching stats. So whichever one you go into, if you go into there, you click where it says view right here, and then you go down to edit. you can actually edit which stats you see when you go into a player's stat page. So you see here, I have one that I created called configured stats, and that's at the top right now. I just moved to the top by clicking this move up right now, right? So if I click move up, nope, I have to select it first, but if I click move up, now it's at the top. And you see here, the first row will be the default row shown on player pages. So I'm going to click OK. And now if we go back to the profile, you'll see it's actually different. It's not just those basic stats anymore. Now you can see some stuff that wasn't there before. You see strikeout percentage, walk percentage. It's in a different order than it was too. So here I have batting average, OBP, slugging. Then I have OPS, OPS plus, WRC plus, and I'm sure some of you are new to the game. Maybe you guys aren't familiar with some of these terms, so I'll definitely explain those too as we go along. But this is kind of how I like to look at players and how I like to evaluate. I think there's more to a batter than maybe his batting average or the amount of home runs that he hits. I like to look at their OPS plus, WRC plus, a lot of stuff like that. So this kind of helps me see that, and I get to customize this. So these are the stats that I want to see. So now I don't have to go into batting stats and go into view and then go into expanded batting stats or whatever. I can do that, and all the stats I need are right where I need them to be, which is cool. So if you want to do that, all you have to do, as it says, go into one of these stats tabs, batting stats or pitching stats, depending on the player that you're looking at. You go into edit, and you can create a new stat row by clicking add stat row and go over that. So you see it's called new row. So maybe I'll just call this, test, or no, there we go, test. So I'm not going to use this, but you would just call it whatever you want to do. And you can then, once it's highlighted, click edit stat row. And so you can customize which stats you want to see. So maybe you want to see for a batter, you want to see how many games they've played, how many games they've started, how many plate appearances they've had, how many at-bats they've had. And then maybe you want to see how many hits, and then you want to see the amount of extra base hits and home runs and RBI and runs scored. Maybe you want to see how many times they've walked and how many times they've struck out, how many times they've grounded into a double play. You want to see their kind of triple slash line, their average, their OBP, their slugging, and you want to see what their WAR is, right? Maybe those are the stats that you yourself want to see. Those are most important to you. So you have all these stats. You just click OK. You can actually drag to reorder these too, as you can see. So maybe you want runs all the way at the top, right, before games, and maybe you want ground into double play right here in between slugging and WAR. So you can drag these to kind of have them where you want them to go. So then you click OK, and it's still highlighted. So if you want to see that when you go into the player pages, you just move it on up all the way to the top, click OK, and then if we go back here, see, there it is. Now it's different again. So this is how these are the stats that you think are the most important, and now it's just very easy for you to see them without having to take any additional steps, which is really cool. So I'm not going to keep it as test. Obviously, I have my stats that I like to see, so I'm going to move those up and click OK. But that's a really, really huge thing I added that I think a lot of people, once they get into this game, are going to really find helpful. I was really excited to be able to do that. So yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about before we get the simulation kind of going underway. Well, a couple things, but if we go back in the manager's office, I want to talk about team owners because they are very important in this game. They kind of influence a lot depending on the type of owner that you have. So you see, we have John Henry here. He's 70 years old. So owners, as in real life, they're going to age. And some of them might retire, some of them might sell the team, some of them might die on the job, and then a new owner comes in. So it's always kind of important if you get those kinds of messages in your mail and news to kind of see what your new owner is and what your current owner is. So you see we have John Henry. He has demanding. So there's kind of 4 things here. So you have patience, you have physical personality, you have involvement, and you have priority that each have kind of a rating next to it. So the ideal owner, and it's very rare to get this, but the ideal owner, you kind of want their ratings in the green or in the blue. That kind of means that they're on the right side of that, whereas the ones in orange and, it depends what it is, but yellow, it's not great, it's not awful. You definitely don't want orange, though. If you have a lot of orange, your owner's really going to be difficult to work with. So This patience thing, and this is coming straight from the manual, it controls how quick an owner is to fire you when your team is performing below the owner's expectations. So you see, John Henry's expectations this year are to achieve a winning record. Now, this team went 84-78 last year, and I think it's fair to say they got worse from 2019. So achieving a winning record, it's going to be a little difficult with this team, but we're going to have to try to keep John Henry happy. That way we don't get fired and we don't get the rug pulled out from under us a little quicker than we want. You see patience demanding, so that's another thing. It's if he's kind of tolerant or lenient, he'll give us a little bit of time to try to get to that winning record, but he's demanding. He wants to see results, and he wants to see those results now. So we're going to really have to try our best to not upset Mr. Henry here. A fiscal personality, that's kind of how the owner, as the manual says, they behave regarding the team budget. So if you have an owner that's generous, they'll probably kick you some more money each year to try to improve your team. If you have someone that's a penny pincher, like Jeffrey Loria was when we did the Marlins series, if you guys remember back then, you're going to have a pretty low budget. You're not going to get a lot of help from your owner in terms of money to use on signings and extensions, stuff like that. You're really going to have to work those margins, try to find the best value players that you can. Now, you see John Henry, he's an economizer. It's not the best that you can have, but it's not the worst thing either. And we're in a big market, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And involvement, normal. He's not going to get too involved in team affairs. He's not going to tell me to do too much with the team. His priority right now is balance. He's not just trying to make money. He's not just trying to win. He's kind of in the middle, which isn't the worst thing. But that's what our owner looks like right now. I just wanted to kind of bring that up. Maybe I'll do like a full kind of tutorial thing on, maybe front office or stuff like that. But anyway, another thing I want to do is just go over the roster and show you guys about shortlisting and preventing promotion and demotion. So if you go into manager options, and you see there's a lot of things that you can kind of have control over. So right now I kind of have control over everything, which is kind of new for me because normally I would kind of give the minor league manager or the assistant GM kind of some free reign over some of this stuff, especially in the minor leagues, but I'm going to kind of do that on my own, especially with the personnel, the minor league personnel. I've kind of taken a bigger interest in that than I had in the past. And in the past, if you guys have watched any of my series, you'll know that I just kind of let the assistant GM kind of handle the coaches that were hired, but now I kind of look at that through a little bit of a more narrow scope. There are kind of guys that I kind of like to get in the personnel pool to help me build my team from the top all the way to the bottom. Free agent signings and releases, I might change that to the managers as time goes on. In fact, I might actually just do that now because they normally don't do anything that crazy. Promotions, demotions, and strategies, though. So I'm going to change this to my assistant GM, but you might be saying, oh, well, what about if there's some guy, like one of my top prospects, and I really don't want them messing around with him. I want to be able to control when he goes up and goes down. Well, there's an easy way to do that. So if you go to your roster, this is going to transition nicely into me talking about a couple of the prospects on this team that I'm excited about. So if we go to here and we go, let's try to find, where do they have Jeter Downs starting? Did I pass him already? There's probably, here we go. He was in with Portland. Okay. So Jeter Downs, he's, for all intents and purposes, he's the best prospect on this Red Sox team right now. He's 21 years old. He is a second baseman / shortstop right now. So he was actually originally drafted by the Reds, I think in the compensatory rounds, in one of those, and the competitive balance rounds. And then he was pretty much the main piece that was sent to the Red Sox. Main prospect piece, I should say, because obviously they got Verdugo, but he was the main prospect that was sent over in the Mookie Betts and David Price deal with the Dodgers. So he is actually named after Derek Jeter, which is pretty cool. So our head scout sees Jeter Downs, and he sees a 3-star kind of player. It seems like contact-wise, he's not too high on him. Thinks he will develop some power, pretty good at the plate in terms of his eye. He will strike out a fair amount, but you take a look at his speed and his fielding, that should not be an issue whatsoever. He's got plus speed, close to plus speed. He can steal bases, which I'm not too concerned about, but You take a look at his position ratings. He can play a good second base, and he can play a solid shortstop too. So this is a good prospect to have. ETA of 2021, so we should be seeing him pretty soon. OSA, they're a little higher on him. They think that his batting statistics, his batting ratings will kind of grade out better over the course of his career. Our head scout, he's not very high on him. So if we take a look here at, I want to go to front office and personnel because I want to see what our head scout looks like. And if you don't understand anything that I'm doing, don't worry. You can ask me in the comments. You can say, hey, can you make a tutorial on this? Or if you just have a quick question that can be answered in a comment, don't be afraid. I would love to help you guys out with this game in any way that I can. So where do I want to go? I want to go to personnel, and I want to look at my scout, which is Paul Taboni. So he highly favors tools. So there's some different types of scouts that you can get in this game. So they kind of do things differently. So you see, I have a scout that is only 30 years old. That is pretty young for a scouting director. I think he was born 7 years before me. So I feel like that's pretty young for a scouting director, but you see, he's great in each of these areas. Green, great, which isn't a bad scout to inherit. There's sometimes when you get a scouting director and they're not very good, so a guy like this isn't awful. And you see his scouting preference here is highly favored tools. So there's a few different, or several different, I should say, preferences that a scout could have. He could have highly favored tools, neutral, favorability, and highly favorability. And that kind of means different things. So if you get a scout that favors tools or highly favors tools, that means that when he goes to scout amateurs, when he goes to scout international guys, when he goes to scout people in the minor leagues, he kind of bases his ratings off the maximum peak. And once again, I'm just taking this right from the manual, which is chock full of a lot of great information. A lot of people I don't think read it, but there are a lot of great things in this manual that you can learn. So as I said, if it says favor tools, it means that he bases his ratings, the player's potential ratings, off the maximum peak that the player could achieve. Whereas if it's favors ability or highly favorability, he kind of bases the potential ratings of what the player can already do and thinks, and he kind of uses that to project what they can do in the future. So what that means from the perspective of a draft or trading for a young prospect, something like that, is if you have a guy that highly favors tools, you might strike out a lot of the time in the draft, maybe more than you want, but you'll have a better chance theoretically of finding that diamond in the rough, those superstar players, those guys that, have all the talent in the world. It's just, are they going to be able to put it all together? So that's what you get with a guy that highly favors tools. On the other end of it, if you have a guy that highly favors ability, you'll get a lot of solid major league players. You get starters, at pretty much all levels, but you might not get those superstar stud young prospects that just kill your team year in and year out. So, or kill the league, I should say, year in and year out. And then neutral, it's obviously neutral. It's in the middle. But at that point, it's really a preference thing. I've been in situations where I favor ability a lot more, but I'm kind of coming around now, and I kind of like scouts that favor tools. So a scout like this for me is actually pretty interesting. I'm actually kind of excited to have a scout like this. Now, if your scout is just awful and you want to get a new one, you can go to click this MLB tab up here, and you go to reports and info, and then available personnel. And you see, if we go to, view scout ratings, perfect. So you'll see that legendary is the best rating that you can get for a scout. Oh, excuse me. And then it goes down from there. I'm looking at, so you'll see here, if you just choose scouting director, you'll get some good options. But if you go to all coaches, so you'll see guys like this, guys like Billy Bean. Let me get another example. Theo Epstein. Obviously, they have roles in their major league front offices, but they're not technically considered. If I go to, so I'm just going to bring up Billy Bean. They're not technically considered the general manager, right? So if we go to back to this front office and personnel screen, so you see there's a general manager role. And so let me just go to a different team, the Indians, right? So general manager, Mike Chernoff. So he has that general manager role. But for a team like if we go back to, let me bring my team back up here. Red Sox, and then reports and info. Sorry, we're gonna get there in a second. There we go. Available personnel. Billy Beane, right, for the Athletics. A lot of people know who that is, but he's not technically considered the general manager of the Oakland Athletics. He's the executive vice president of baseball operations. So he's not the GM in this game, which means he's available. So a lot of times what I like to do is kind of just instead of just looking at scouts, go to all coaches, because you can see some of these guys. Theo Epstein, the same thing. He's not technically considered the GM. I think he's considered the vice president of baseball ops too, but I could be wrong for the Cubs. So they technically don't have a position in this game, which means that when you get into your save, they're always available immediately, and it's pretty easy for them, especially because most of these guys are from the United States, or in Doug Melvin's case, Canada, to get these guys as your scouting director. So if you're ever in need of a new scouting director or assistant GM, whatever, definitely take a look here and see if any of these guys are available. Now, you will see guys like this guy, right? Nubihisa Sato, who is from Japan. And maybe say, okay, well, he highly favors tools. He has good ratings. I want to get him. Well, it's not that easy, because if you go to offer contract, okay. I want to try to get an example of this. Now, see, this normally doesn't happen, which is very surprising. Maybe it's by team. So a lot of times, if you try to hire someone from a foreign league, they'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable working in your league. Now, maybe because I'm the Red Sox and we have such like a big national or international presence, maybe that's not an issue. But I know when I'm the Philadelphia Phillies, for example, when I try to sign, scouts that aren't from America, they don't really want to come over. They want to just stay in Japan, and I kind of have to settle for someone from the USA, which is normally fine anyway. But if they say, sorry, I'm not comfortable working in a foreign league, you just kind of have to, get on, find a different candidate, and that'll be that. But just want to talk about that and go back to Jeter Downs. So as I was saying, I kind of went on a tangent there. As I was saying, you can make sure that your AI managers and GM and stuff, they don't mess around with this. So what I like to do first is I like to kind of add all of my notable prospects to a shortlist. So by right-clicking on the player's name, so we're going to right-click and shortlist. We're going to create a new shortlist. So I'll call this one Notable Prospects. Okay. And so now we will add Jeter Downs to that link. And now you see his name becomes all capital letters. This means that he is on a shortlist. Now, along with that, I want to make sure that he does not get moved up or down until I deem him ready to get moved up or down. So once again, I'm going to right-click on his name. I am going to go to transaction, and I'm going to go to disable AI, demotion, and promotion. And now you see this lock that appears next to his name. Now, what that means is that the AI and manager, they might move up Jeremy Profar, right? They might move him up to AAA. They might send him down to high A. But when it comes to Jeter Downs, he's going to stay exactly where he is, at least he should. I know that was kind of a bug, I think. I was reading that someone is having issues with that. But he should theoretically stay in AA until I decide I want to move him up to AAA. So that's what that lock means. And then I would do that with all of my prospects that I want to do. So the next guy I want to talk about, which is perfect because he's right here, is Tristan Cassius, the 20-year-old first baseman. He says a third baseman here, but as you can see, I'm probably going to keep him at first baseman because he doesn't have a lot of range. He does have a good arm, but his range and his air defensive ratings aren't very great. So I'm going to probably move him to first base, maybe DH, I don't know. But see, 2022 ETA, and ETA, for those that don't know, it's estimated time of arrival. He was their first-round pick in 2018. You can see right there, prospect ranking number 81. He was in high last year. You see the South Atlantic League with the Salem Red Sox. He was among the leaders in the league in extra base hits. He had 49, which was second. He had 19 home runs, which was third. And he had a .472 slugging percentage, which was fourth. Or no, he wasn't with the... Oh, no, he's with Greensboro. I think that's what that was. Not Salem. Salem was high A. Sorry, I messed up. But you can see he has a lot of raw power. And OSA and our head scout both agree that he has a lot of raw power. OSA seems to think that his eye will be a little better than what our head scout thinks. But we'll see if he does end up developing into something special. As I said, he's probably not going to be up for a few years, but we'll see. Excuse me. I'm going to get a drink of water here. Give me 1 second. It's better. Okay. So we are going to add him to that short list as well. So once again, short list, add to notable prospects, and then we are going to disable AI, demotion, and promotion. And now, to do this an easy way, we're just going to type in these players because I don't feel like looking for what team they're on. So Bobby Dalbec is on the Pawtucket Red Sox. See, he's 24 years old. He should be up this year at some point with the Red Sox in our save. He was the 4th round pick in 2016. He was actually, so you see, he went to Arizona. He was actually a better pitcher than batter his final collegiate season. But the Red Sox drafted him. They said that you're going to be a batter. And he's actually done pretty well over the years. You see that in his time in professional ball, he's actually been a pretty solid player at all levels of the minors. Now, he is really a 3 true outcomes kind of guy. And you can see that in his ratings profile. His contact is a little rough. He's going to strike out a lot. But his eye is solid. He has a lot of power. And there's room for those guys, especially nowadays in what MLB is today. And he's the opposite of Cassius, where Cassius is probably going to be a better first baseman and third baseman. Dalbec, he can play a solid third base. You can see that he has an almost elite arm. He's not going to commit a lot of errors. He has pretty solid range for a third baseman. Maybe you'd like it to be a little higher, but the power combined with the eye and the solid fielding, this is a player that I can definitely see contributing to our team somewhere down the line. So we are going to add him to that notable prospects shortlist, and we are going to disable demotion and promotion. And now I know the other guy is actually on the pitching staff right now, and that is Brian Mota. So you see he is a 2.5 star potential according to our head scout. OSA views him, I'd say, a little less favorably probably than our head scout does. See, Mota's only 20 years old. I'm kind of surprised that they have him here right now. But he does have an ETA of this year. I don't know if I'm going to start him in the major leagues. I might start him maybe in AAA or maybe just throw him down in AA again because he only made 11 starts there in 2019. But he was an international signing, and he has really kind of blossomed. He has the upside of probably a mid-rotation kind of piece. If his stuff develops, that'd be nice, but you can see his control is going to be a little questionable. Right now, it's only at a 35 out of 80, which is not very good. If it stays at 35, that's going to be a major issue in terms of his longevity as a starter. But he could end up being a pretty solid late reliever, if nothing else. He has some pretty solid pitches. He does get movement with them, and if that stuff develops even a little bit, he could be a solid relief prospect. But we're going to give him a shot. Right now, as a starting pitcher, he's a ground ball pitcher, sits at 92 to 94, and he does get a lot of ground balls, which is good. So we'll see. We will see if he has what it takes to be a starter in Major League Baseball, especially pitching in the AL East. I'm not too sure, but regardless, Brian Mota, we will add him to our notable prospects shortlist and make sure that the AI can't really do... I suppose that he would have to be in the minors for me to do that anyway, but okay. And now the 5th guy I want to see if he's actually in the game or not, and he is. So in real life, he's not going to be with the Red Sox. So he has a 2023 ETA. You see, he's 22 years old, so 2023 might seem a little far off. It's because, so he was a 4th round pick out of Navy, as you see right there. He could have been a 1st round pick. He had the talent, but because he was with Navy, he had the military commitment, and they tried to get out of it. He tried to put in the waiver. They didn't accept it. So he has to finish up his 2 years, and then he'll be able to come back and play baseball. So in real life, it'll be interesting to see if he'll still be able to pitch like he did when he was in college, right after he comes back from the military. But in this game, I'm excited because I think that he can be a pretty reliable starter. OSA seems to view him a little more favorably, especially in terms of stuff and control. But you can see his pitches are pretty solid. This is another guy that, if he doesn't really work out, if the movement and the control don't improve during his time as a member of our minor league organizations, if he doesn't look like he can be a starter, it's another guy that I think could probably be a pretty solid reliever for us somewhere down the line. But we will add him to prospects, and we will disable promotion, and we will do 2 more guys that I want to talk about, and then we will start the simulation. So where is he? I need a lot of Jimenez's. There we go. Gilberto Jimenez. He's only 19 years of age, 2022 ETA. He was an international signing in 2017. He was the Red Sox Latin Program Player of the Year in his 2018 debut. You see he slashed 319, 384, 420 for an 804 OPS. He won the New York Penn Batting League title last year. You see he hit 359, which is very impressive. And he actually did this, I was reading, he did this primarily left-handed, which is something he learned how to do 2 years ago. He was never a left-handed hitter until he learned how to do it. Now you see he's a switch hitter. This is someone I'm really excited to see what they can do. You see, he doesn't have a lot of power. He's not going to be a powerful bat, but he can hit the ball. He can find the gaps a little bit. He has a solid eye. He's not going to strike out a ton. Elite speed, the best of the best. He can steal bases, and he can play a pretty solid center field. He has a lot of range. His arm's not great, but he has a lot of range, which is really good to see out of a center fielder. So I am very excited. It's going to take a while for him to get up. Obviously, he's only 19 years old, but I'm excited for when this guy does finally come up. I think he could be a pretty good part of our outfield when this team becomes a contender again. So, I should go back to Jimenez, and I want to add him to the short list, and I want to make sure that is disabled. Now, one final guy I want to talk about, the final prospect that I'm going to talk about, Jay Groom. And the reason I'm talking about him is because I watched him. I watched him pitch in high school. It wasn't really a showcase game, but even then, even in high school, you could tell that this kid was going to be special. This is the guy I wanted the Phillies to take first overall in the 2016 draft. You see Groom has a 2022 ETA. He was their first-round pick in 2016. He fell to 12th overall. He had the talent to go a lot higher. I said I wanted him to go number 1 at the Phillies, but he had the talent to go a lot higher. But makeup concerns kind of led teams to worry and not pick him. But the Red Sox took a shot, and I think they're going to be pretty well rewarded when this kid does make the majors. Our head scout doesn't view him very favorably. OSA likes him a little more. But injuries have definitely kind of hurt him, no pun intended, over his time. He had Tommy John in May 2018, but I still think he can be a top of the rotation starter. Maybe not according to our head scout, but in real life, I think he can be a top of the rotation starter. And even in this game, I think he could be a solid piece of our rotation if he does make it up. So I'm excited to see if he does develop nicely. I hope he does. So we are going to disable AI demotion promotion. And those are the prospects I'm just going to do that with right now. I will do some more off camera because I don't want to just take the entire episode doing that. So give me 1 second. We will simulate up to opening day and try to get through the first month.